Have you ever received a message that arrived long after someone was gone? A message so unexpected that it completely changed the way you remembered them. Imagine carrying the weight of loss for an entire year, believing there was nothing left to say, only to discover that a final message had been waiting for you all along. Tonight on A Fair Confession, we bring you a powerful story about friendship, loyalty, and a promise that survived the passage of time. Stay with us until the end, because this story carries a lesson that many people only understand when it's almost too late. It was a quiet evening when Mark heard a knock at his front door. The sound surprised him. He rarely had visitors anymore. Over the past year, life had become much quieter than it used to be. His best friend David had passed away the previous year, and although time had continued moving forward, something always felt missing. The two of them had spent most of their lives together. They met as teenagers and quickly became inseparable. Whether it was weekend adventures, long conversations about the future, or helping each other through life's challenges, they had always been there for one another. Now those memories felt both comforting and painful. Mark walked to the door and opened it. Standing outside was Emily, David's wife. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It had been several months since they had seen each other. Life had pulled them in different directions after David's passing. Emily offered a small smile. In her hands was an old notebook. It looked worn from use but carefully protected. After a brief greeting, she said something unexpected. "There's something David wanted you to have." Mark stared at the notebook. "What do you mean?" he asked. Emily stepped inside and sat down. She carefully placed the notebook on the coffee table between them. Then she explained. Several weeks before David passed away, he began writing in the notebook almost every day. When he finished, he asked Emily to keep it safe. But there was one condition. She was not allowed to give it to Mark until exactly 1 year later. Mark couldn't understand why. Why wait so long? Why keep something so important hidden? Emily simply shook her head. Those were his instructions. Mark looked down at the notebook. His hands felt strangely unsteady as he opened the cover. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was David's. For a moment, it felt as though his friend was sitting right there in the room again. The first pages contained simple reflections. David wrote about everyday moments that most people overlook: morning coffee, family dinners, road trips, conversations that lasted late into the night. The more Mark read, the more he realized how deeply David appreciated life's ordinary moments. There were pages about gratitude, pages about mistakes, pages about lessons learned over the years. Then he found a section with his own name written across the top. He paused, a lump formed in his throat. Slowly, he continued reading. David described the day they first met at school. He remembered details Mark had completely forgotten: the awkward introductions, the terrible jokes, the adventures they planned before they were old enough to drive. As the pages continued, story after story came back to life. There was the camping trip where they got lost for hours because neither of them wanted to admit they had taken the wrong trail. There was the old car they tried to repair themselves and accidentally made worse. There were celebrations, disappointments, successes, and failures. Every memory reminded Mark of how much of his life had been shared with his friend. Then the tone of the journal changed. The entries became more serious. David wrote about facing uncertainty. He wrote about questions he couldn't answer. He wrote about learning how valuable time really is. It was during these pages that Mark discovered something he had never known. Months before his passing, David had learned that he was dealing with a significant health challenge. The news had forced him to think differently about the future. Mark stopped reading and looked up. He couldn't believe it. How had he never known? Why hadn't David told him? The answer came several pages later. David explained that he didn't want his remaining time to be defined by worry. He didn't want every conversation to become serious. He didn't want the people he loved to look at him differently. Instead, he wanted to continue creating good memories. He wanted laughter. He wanted normal conversations. He wanted life. As Mark read those words, something finally clicked. For the first time, he understood why his friend had remained so positive during those final months. David wasn't ignoring reality. He was choosing how he wanted to spend the time he had. Near the back of the notebook, Mark found an envelope. His name was written neatly across the front. The paper had been folded carefully. Taking a deep breath, he opened it. Inside was a letter. The first line immediately caught his attention. My friend, if you're reading this, then enough time has passed for me to share what I couldn't say in person. Mark continued reading. The letter was filled with gratitude. David thanked him for years of friendship. He thanked him for showing up during difficult times. He thanked him for being honest when honesty was needed and supportive when support mattered most. Many of the moments David mentioned seemed ordinary at the time, yet those were the moments he remembered most. The letter contained a powerful reminder. People often underestimate the impact they have on those around them. Simple acts of loyalty and kindness can become some of the most meaningful memories a person carries throughout life. Then came one final request. David asked Mark to stay connected with Emily, not out of obligation. Not because she needed someone to solve her problems, but because genuine human connection matters. He believed that people heal better when they don't have to carry life's challenges alone. He wanted the two people he cared about most to continue supporting each other. When Mark reached the end of the letter, he sat silently. The room felt different somehow. The sadness was still there, but something else had joined it. Perspective. For months, he had focused only on what was lost. Now he found himself focusing on what remained. The memories, the lessons, the friendships, the impact one person could leave behind. Emily sat quietly across from him. She had already read the notebook months earlier. She understood exactly what he was feeling. The two of them spent the rest of the evening sharing stories. At first, the conversation was emotional, but before long, they found themselves laughing. They remembered David's terrible sense of direction, his confidence in skills he clearly didn't possess, his habit of turning simple situations into unforgettable adventures. Hours passed without either of them noticing. For the first time in a very long while, remembering David didn't feel overwhelming. It felt comforting. Before leaving, Emily reached into her bag one final time. She handed Mark a photograph. The picture had been taken years earlier during a summer gathering. All three of them were standing together, smiling at the camera. Mark turned the photo over. On the back was a handwritten message. It read, "Take care of each other. Appreciate every moment. Time moves faster than you think." Those words stayed with him long after Emily left. He placed the photograph on a shelf where he could see it every day. Over the following months, he and Emily remained in contact. They occasionally met for coffee. They shared stories. They celebrated milestones. Most importantly, they made sure David's memory remained part of their lives, not through sadness, but through gratitude. As time passed, Mark finally understood why David had asked Emily to wait an entire year. Some messages require distance before they can be fully understood. The first year after losing someone is often spent simply learning how to move forward. Only later do people gain the clarity needed to appreciate the deeper lessons left behind. David's final gift wasn't the notebook. It wasn't the letter, it wasn't even the photograph. His final gift was a reminder that relationships matter more than possessions, a reminder that kindness leaves a lasting impact. A reminder that the moments we often consider ordinary are usually the moments that become unforgettable. Most importantly, it was a reminder that the value of a life is measured not by its length, but by the positive influence it leaves on others. Even today, whenever Mark looks at that photograph, he remembers those words. Take care of each other, appreciate every moment. Time moves faster than you think. And perhaps that's a lesson all of us can learn from. Thank you for watching A Fair Confession. If this story touched your heart, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this reminder today. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people who matter most.